Are you burned out or just tired? And how do you know the difference? And what do you do about it? So, you've been exhausted before. You pushed through many busy seasons. You powered through deadlines and survived sleepless nights with a sick kid or a worried heart, and you recovered. That's normal tiredness. It lifts. But what if it doesn't lift? What if you wake up tired? What if the things that used to give you energy, your work, your family, your faith, your purpose, now just feel like another thing to get through? And what if you started to feel a little numb? Then it's possible you're not just tired, you may be burning out. Hi there. I'm Dr. Bev Smallwood. I'm a licensed psychologist, speaker, and author of the upcoming book, All the Rage. And in over 4 decades of clinical practice, I've helped organizations and people deal with burnout. And I've sat across from some of the most driven, caring, capable people you can imagine. And those are the people that are most prone to burnout. I've watched burnout quietly hollow them out from the inside. So today, I want to help you understand what burnout actually is, how to recognize it in yourself or others. And here's the part most people miss: what to do about it that actually works. So let's dive in. Now, I want you to meet 2 or 3 people that are great examples of what we're talking about today. Let's talk about Sarah. She became a nurse because she really wanted to help people when they were at their most vulnerable. She was that nurse that remembered your name and that held your hand before you went into surgery or stayed a few minutes past her shift because she could see that you were scared. But after years of short staffed units and back to back 12-hour shifts and watching patients suffer in ways she couldn't fix, something changed. She started pulling back emotionally and telling herself it's professionalism. But she stopped feeling much of anything when she clocked in, and she began to quietly wonder, am I even good at this anymore? She wasn't being dramatic. She was burned out. Here's another person, David. He's 62 years old, and for the last 4 years, he's been the primary caretaker for his mother, who has Alzheimer's. He never complained because that's not who he is. And he managed her medications, her doctor visits, her moods, her wandering, her fear. He was devoted. But last month, his sister called to say she'd pop in for a visit. And David's first reaction, the very first thing he felt, was resentment. He didn't feel gratitude. He didn't feel relief. He felt resentment. And he was ashamed of himself for it. Look, David has not stopped loving his mother. He's simply run out of himself to give. One more. It's Michelle. Michelle's a wife, a mother of 3, a part-time teacher, and she volunteers at her church. She does everything right, and on paper, she has a beautiful life. But lately, she finds herself snapping at her kids over nothing, and she cries in her car on the way to the school pickup. She stopped texting her friends a while back because it just feels like one more thing to do. And at night, when the house is finally quiet, she doesn't feel peaceful. She just feels empty. Michelle is not an ungrateful person, and she isn't weak, and she's certainly not a bad mother. She's burned out. So Sarah, David, and Michelle, They're very different people in three very different situations, but they share the same condition, burnout. And I will tell you, I've been in that condition myself. So here's the framework that helped me understand what's really happening to people in burnout. In 1981, psychologist Christina Maslach and Susan Jackson published their landmark study that gave us the most widely used clinical definition of burnout. The Maslach Burnout Inventory identified three distinct dimensions, and understanding all three of those is important because they don't always show up together. Dimension 1 is emotional exhaustion. This is the one most people recognize. It's that feeling of being completely depleted, not just physically tired, but wrung out on the inside. Your emotional tank is on empty, and no matter how much you rest, it doesn't seem to refuel you. You can hear it in phrases like, I just don't have anything left. I'm going through the motions. I used to care so much, but now I don't know where that went. Sarah, the nurse, felt this, and so did Michelle. Here's the second dimension, depersonalization. This one is a little harder to recognize and scarier for people who discover it in themselves. Depersonalization is when you start emotionally distancing yourself from the very people that you're supposed to be caring for or serving. They stop feeling like real people to you and start feeling like problems to manage. The nurse that starts thinking of patients as the hip in room 4, a counselor who catches herself watching the clock, a mother that realizes that she's just waiting for bedtime every single night, or a caregiver who feels nothing when his mother calls his name. Listen, this isn't coldness. This isn't who these people are. It's a psychological defense mechanism, the psyche's desperate attempt to protect itself from more pain by turning down the emotional volume. David felt this, and he thought something was really wrong with him. Look, I want to say this clearly. If you recognize this in yourself, please don't pile shame on top of exhaustion. You're not a bad person. You just may be a depleted person. And dimension number 3 is this one, reduced sense of personal accomplishment. This is the dimension that tends to arrive last, and it hits pretty hard. It's that creeping sense that nothing you do is making a difference, that you're not effective anymore, and that maybe you never were. David, who'd managed his mother's entire world for 4 years, has started to think, I'm failing her anyway. What's the point? And Michelle, who was doing a genuinely remarkable job holding her family together, had started to believe, I'm not a good mother. A good mother wouldn't feel this way. This dimension is especially dangerous because it can quietly dismantle your sense of identity and worth. So, emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and the reduced sense of personal accomplishment. These are the 3 faces of burnout. You may recognize yourself in one of them, or maybe in all 3. Either way, here's what I want you to hear. This is not a character flaw. It's not a spiritual failure. This is a human response to giving more than you've been able to replenish. And there is a way forward. Most burnout advice sounds the same. Get more sleep, take a vacation, practice self-care, or set some better boundaries. And all those are good. They're certainly not wrong. But I want to give you something more targeted and honestly, something most people never think to do first. So that is diagnose before you prescribe. Before you try to fix burnout, you need to know which dimension you're most burned out in because the solution is different depending on where you are. If your primary struggle is emotional exhaustion, then what you need most is genuine restoration, not just rest, but activities that actively refill you. Not just the absence of stress, but the presence of something life giving. For some people, that's beauty. For others, it's music or movement or nature or laughter or worship or creative work. You have to identify what actually fills your tank, not what's supposed to, but what actually does, and be intentional about it. If your struggle is primarily depersonalization, that emotional numbness, and that feeling of distance, the counterintuitive answer isn't to push yourself to feel more. It's to reduce the volume of demands on your empathy long enough for your emotional immune system to recover. So, this might mean delegating or temporarily stepping back from a role or having a very honest conversation with someone about what you can sustainably give. And if your struggle is that crushing sense that you're not effective, that nothing matters, that you've lost your purpose, that's a different conversation entirely. That's about meaning making and about reconnecting with why you started. It's about recalibrating what success even looks like. So, taking that time to diagnose where you really are in burnout is an important first step. Here's the second: do a burnout audit. Hey, not an audit of your schedule, but of your identity. So here's what I want you to sit with. Most burnout doesn't just come from doing too much. It comes from deriving too much of your sense of worth from what you do. When your identity is fused with your role, when being a good nurse or a good caregiver or a good mother or a good psychologist isn't just something you do, but the core of who you believe you are, then every failure, every limitation, every imperfect outcome feels like a verdict on your worth as a human being. So that audit question isn't, what do I need to drop from my calendar? The audit question is, what beliefs do I carry about what I have to do to earn my worth? Because this is a truth that'll set you free. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. And a vessel that has no worth except when it's full and pouring, that vessel is only one bad day away from collapse. And the third step I want to talk about is a counterintuitive move. It's telling someone the truth. This is a step most people skip. They resist it, especially the strong people. Look, burnout thrives in secrecy. It thrives in the performance of being just fine. How are you doing? Fine. It feeds on the story. I should be able to handle this, and the fear that if people knew how depleted you really were, they'd think less of you or stop trusting you or rely on you less. But here's what I know to be true, both as a psychologist and as a person of faith. You were not designed to carry this alone. Not by design, not by psychology. This is not how it's supposed to be. So, telling one trustworthy person the truth, I am not okay and I need some help. That's not weakness. It's the bravest, most strategic thing a burned out person can do. And if professional support is what you need, please pursue it without shame. Seeking help isn't giving up. It's how you get back to the person that you were meant to be. So, Sarah, David, Michelle, me, and maybe you, and the thousands of real people represented, we're not failing. People are human. They're people who gave everything they had for longer than they should have had to do it alone. So, if you see yourself in any of these stories today, I want you to do one thing. Be as compassionate with yourself as you would be with someone you cared about. Burnout's not the end of the story. It can be the turning point if you're willing to be honest about where you are and take your next best available step. If this video helped you today, I'd love for you to do 3 things. 1, subscribe to our channel. There's so much more coming on healing and resilience and coping with confidence and living with purpose. And I want you to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it so that more people who need it can find it. And leave me a comment below. I genuinely read them and tell me, what's your biggest burnout contributor right now? Is it the volume of demands, the emotional weight, the sense that what you do doesn't matter? Let's talk about it together because you don't have to figure this out alone. So until we meet again, keep going, keep growing, and you'll come out stronger on the other side. I'll see you next time.